The Ducks now 3-1 on the season after losing to Stanford to open conference play in what was an electric atmosphere at Autzen Stadium. He's Rob Moseley, I'm Joey Mac. We're going to recap it. Let's start with how things ended. Unfortunately for the Ducks, a 38-31 loss. Just a few too many mistakes, I think, that Stanford was able to capitalize on, and the Cardinal don't beat themselves, and they didn't in this one.
Yeah, one of the things you got to learn how to do is learn how to win, and this is a team that felt like it just had to learn how to execute those last few elements of a game late in a game to control things and to handle that under the pressure of winning, of securing the point spread doesn't make it sound like a big upset, but I think it would have been a win that opened a lot of eyes around the country, and so that with that comes some pressure, and when you're in the chance to do that, you got to be able to execute when it counts, and there are a lot of different facets. I mean, 6, 7, 8 plays we could look at and say, hey, you just make that one play. Ducks beat Stanford, knock off a top 10 team, and you know, we're talking about a season that's on a different trajectory right now, but still a season that's on a really positive trajectory, I think. Some frustrations, obviously, with the way Oregon's last offensive play in regulation went. That we heard a lot about from fans right after the game, but I think in the last full day, it's kind of turned around, and I think people are pretty pleased with the overall direction of where the program's going.
We talked a lot about how physicality, meeting Stanford head-on, that's what Coach Cristobal talked about, and I think we saw that. You know, that transition under Coach Cristobal, I don't think it's in a transition anymore. I think we've arrived at that point with how well Oregon played. And I know we could debate round and round, the coaches will too, on all those late-game situations, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. But still, I think a lot of positives to be taken now that we've all kind of gotten over the want.
Yeah, you know, you look at that last offensive play where there's unfortunately the fumble, and you start to play, you know, you start to play through what all can go wrong on a punt play.
Sure.
I don't think there's a play in football in which more can potentially go wrong than a punt play. You could have a bad snap, you could have the punter mishandle it, you could have a kick blocked, you could have a kick returned for a score. All these different things that can break down. Whereas if you're a coach in Mario Cristobal who prides himself on running the ball, and the Ducks have been running the ball so well in that game, and you say, hey, we'll just hand it off one more time, we'll get a first down, and we'll get out of here with a win. If you're measuring risk-reward, you can see how you're having that conversation in your head as a coach going, hey, this is the safe play. But you know, unfortunately, it didn't work out. And you know, unfortunate for C.J. Verdell because he was having a heck of a game running the ball, kind of a breakout performance, led the Ducks in rushing. And he's going to have to rally himself because the Ducks need him going forward.
For C.J. Verdell, 20 carries, 115 yards, and a touchdown with a long run of 48. I mean, the run game in general, Ducks, I thought, really asserted themselves on that offensive line as well. Ducks had to be happy with that.
It was an interesting game because Stanford has to go to the air to get its points. Ducks are getting them through the ground. I think, you know, 3 different guys, I think, rushed for touchdowns. So, yeah, I think you look at the way Oregon ran the ball, nearly 5-yard per carry average if you take sacks out of the equation. I think they felt like Shane Lemieux said after the game, he felt like offensively they won that battle up front. Didn't win the game. He, you know, as he said, it didn't lead to a win. But if you're looking for progress in that area, that physicality Coach Cristobal has preached, it was there. And defensively there too. Bryce Love, you know, under 90 yards or so. You know, just couldn't get going. The Ducks wanted to make Stanford throw the ball. They devoted a lot of resources to stopping the run and paid the price for that on the back end. But up front, this continues to be a top 5 rush defense in the country. And now it's not just against 3 non-Power 5 opponents. It's against Stanford, who's made its reputation. And no bigger play, we thought at the time, than that stop on 4th and 1. That just sort of seemed like, you know, if the game was a referendum on the physicality of this program, that play was a referendum, and they passed. So, again, big picture, a lot to like.
You shut down a Heisman Trophy finalist from a year ago, finished second in voting. That is saying something.
And it seemed like they had about 13 offensive linemen on the field for that play, too. They went with one of those jumbo situations. I mean, everybody knew what was coming, and the Ducks still stopped it.
Big reason why Oregon got out to such a quick start as well, and we talked about that. Hey, Ducks caught the first pass in this game.
They did.
And it was kind of a sign of what was to come. A huge performance from Dylan Mitchell. Second most catches in a game in Oregon history. Second most yards in a game in Oregon history. That was an impressive performance from Dylan Mitchell.
Yeah, one thing I talked about with some people in the weeks leading up to this game is that, you know, Oregon's got competent receivers, Johnny Johnson, Jalen Redd, and Dylan Mitchell. They've got guys who can catch the ball. Did they have a guy who could really increase Herbert's margin for error? If Herbert isn't as precise as normal, do they have a guy that, you know, like Darren Carrington, like a Jeff Mayle, like a Keenan Howery going back, you know, back a few years? Dylan Mitchell started to look like that guy, that you don't have to put it right on the numbers, and he's going to go up and get a ball or go away from his body and make a catch if it's a little behind him. He made some really, really tough catches. Herbert was great, as usual. 25 of 27 in regulation. I mean, it's hard to beat that, and both incompletions hit guys in the hands. But Dillon Mitchell really made a statement, and he's a guy like Herbert, I think, that if he can get, if he can embrace being kind of that alpha guy and get his head in that wrapped around that, his potential, we haven't seen what his potential could be.
Justin Herbert, though, you mentioned it, was excellent. 25 of 27 going to overtime. He finishes the game at 26 for 33 for 346 yards, a touchdown, a rating of 170.8. The interception on the last play of the game, when you're trying to force it, I think you let that one go.
Yep.
This was a chance for, I think, Justin Herbert, with the national eyes on him, to put on a show, and boy, did he ever.
Yeah, no doubt about it. As Dillon Mitchell himself said, he looked like the #1 pick in an NFL draft, and I think that probably scares a lot of people. We hope it's the 2020 NFL draft we're talking about. I think we can all get on the same page around that. But yeah, I mean, that's for days to come. I think right now you appreciate how well this guy's throwing the ball. And again, yeah, we talked ad nauseum about, hey, if we could just see him complete the first space, that helps him get in a confident headspace.
Right.
And he's such a better player in that regard. And he did it, and I think we saw the fruits of that. That he was just from that very first reception, just believing that he was a guy who could lead his team to victory and playing like it.
Ducks outgained Stanford, seemingly outplayed Stanford, but again, a few miscues that did not go Oregon's way. One of the things, though, I wanted to bring up was that it felt like Autzen of old. I mean, this was a 58,000-plus crowd, and we talked about it on Duck Insider and heading into the week that there's been one time in my time at Oregon that I've had to press my headphones in to be able to hear Jerry and Georgie on the sideline. This felt like one of those games. I mean, it was awesome atmosphere.
It was. I mean, it felt like any game between 2010 and 2014, maybe even going back a few years before that. Just that was the vibe. Hopefully we'll get to see more of that. There's a big game coming up against Washington, and hopefully if the Ducks play like they did the other day, that's going to be a competitive game. That's going to be a game Oregon has every chance to win. And the crowd can be a factor in games like that. And so, one of the things that I love to see is that ESPN said this is the highest rated game they've had in their family and between Pac-12 teams since 2014. The highest rated market was Portland, a 16-point-something share. Well, hopefully a few more of those people from Portland come down actually to Autzen Stadium, because it was officially a sellout, but there were some seats available, and there's still tickets available for that Washington game, which is kind of hard to fathom. So you'd like to see a similar atmosphere for that UW game, because again, it's a game where a crowd can have an impact. We saw Stanford affected by the crowd noise. And every little thing helps. Yeah,
no doubt. Coach Cristobal said going into the game that he thought the intangibles would be the difference, and I feel like some of those intangibles really were.
Well, there's no bigger intangible in football, unfortunately, than turnovers.
Right.
That's probably the biggest X factor no matter what, and we saw how much turnovers can impact a game. Because you look at the stat sheet and you say, wow, the Ducks lost this game.
Right.
But that turnover category is where the whole game is told, and it just. It bit the Ducks, and again, you have to learn how to win. You have to learn how to not make those mistakes with the game on the line.
And moving forward, now you can't let this game and these mistakes beat you twice. With Cal on the horizon, it's the first road game for Oregon coming up, as the Ducks will try to even their record in conference play. It'll be a 7:30 kickoff on Fox Sports 1. Cal, pretty good team. They're coming off a bye. This is going to be a good test for Oregon.
Yeah, that's dangerous when you got to go on the road and play a team that had a bye. You'd like to think this is a game that Oregon could win by a couple of scores. And if the Ducks do that, then they'll show that the positives from the Stanford game carry just as much weight as the negatives. But you let the Stanford game linger and affect your preparation. You drop one in Berkeley, suddenly the negatives from the Stanford game loom a lot larger than the positives. So, I really thought the Stanford game was kind of a fork in the road for the program that would really tell a lot about where things are going for this season and beyond. I think for beyond, we definitely got a positive impression that things are on the right track in the big picture. But I don't think I was right when it comes to as far as this season goes. I didn't anticipate that Oregon would be able to beat Stanford at its own game in terms of physicality, but still lose. And so that kind of opens up some unknowns again, kind of where things are going to go. And the resulting Cal is going to tell a huge story.
Try not to let it beat you twice. Cal on the horizon, the first road test for the Ducks, a 7:30 kickoff on Fox Sports 1. As Oregon now 3-1 after the tough loss to Stanford, I think one that a lot of people feel about, and certainly the Ducks do as well. Now they're on the road to see if they can take out some of those frustrations in Berkeley.